Hi and welcome to this fortnight's video blog. It's video blog number 7. I'm glad you've connected in, and if you're doing that for the first time, welcome. I trust these things are helpful to you and invite you at the end to maybe make sure you connect and let me know, give me any feedback you would like to give. There are times when I really just choose one major thought and try and expand or explore or extrapolate that thought, particularly in the leadership sense, and it could be all sorts of leadership. It could be organisational leadership that you're involved in, church leadership, it could be not-for-profit space, it could be the business leadership, or your own personal leadership, which is sometimes the hardest place to lead. Today's thought is really just a 3-word phrase. It's the phrase, catch my drift. It's a phrase that we often use in a question sense. So, did you catch my drift? Where we say something, we want to discover if someone has understood what we say, and we say, do you catch my drift? Or you try to explain something complicated and you want to see if someone's got it. You say, do you catch my drift? Today I want to not look in the question side of it, but more as an imperative, as a call, as a cry. Catch my drift, with the recognition that if we're not fiercely intentional, the temptation for us is to drift into things that maybe are unhelpful for our leadership. Drift into thinking patterns or actions or behaviours that might just become our defaults if we're not intentional about them not becoming our defaults. So I want to think about that today, and it's a call or a plea or a cry to myself, Tim, catch my drift, or to have trusted others who you believe can help you, or it could be to a coach or a mentor, or it could be a cry out to God, catch my drift, because the temptation is often to drift into patterns that we are unhelpful and unhealthy for us. So I just want to throw out a couple of those, just a handful of those drifts that I find it easy to drift into if I'm not careful, and maybe I'm sure you can explore and find heaps of others. It's easy to drift into being insular rather than being expansive or generous. And by that what I mean is it's easy to get into a situation where you pull up the drawbridges or you batten down the hatches, or whatever metaphor you want to use, where you just close in on yourself and everything becomes around you or your leadership or your organisation. And particularly in this time we're in at the moment, where maybe it's just everything focused on your survival and your success, and we squirrel all the resources we can to make it about that, rather than being more generous, more expansive in our thoughts. And when I say generous, I don't just mean generous in terms of finances, but generous in terms of thinking, generous in terms of our attitudes, generous in terms of our time and our energy and our attention. And it's very easy to drift into the insular, just becoming, tied up with our own particular world. And when we do that, we actually become a smaller person. And generosity and gratitude and expansiveness and a growing heart will actually work to our benefit, but we have to be fiercely intentional about that. There's another one. It's easy to drift into caution as opposed to adventure and to challenge. We can become very risk averse. That our natural tendency might just become risk averse, and sometimes you need caution in a season of life, but that's good when it's intentional, not when we just automatically drift into it and we avoid the adventure, we avoid challenges, we avoid opportunities that are there because we just want to fall into that space of caution and even fear that can take us over, can become a natural drift for us where we're frightened. And it's easy to get caught up in that drift. We want to say, catch my drift, when I'm drifting into the just risk-averse tendency that we might have. It's easier to get caught into the drift of complexity rather than simplicity. This often happens when our organisation or whatever gets a bit bigger and things get more complicated and more complex, and we drift into complexity. And what I mean by simplicity is not simplistic, not pretending it's not complex, but trying to make those things that are complex as simple as possible, to articulate them as clearly as possible, to make sure there are bite-sized chunks as simple as possible to achieve, so that we can say things clearly and simply rather than get caught up in the complex, because there's a dynamic that happens when we drift to the complex and the complicated. And the dynamic is this: the more complex or complicated something becomes, the less passionate we can be about it, because our mind goes to all sorts of places. The more simple, the more clear, the more articulate a vision can be, or a purpose can be, or your why can be, the more that is, the more passionate we can be about it. And if we're passionate about something, enthusiastic, energetic, excited about something, it'll mean more for everyone around the place. So we often drift to the complex rather than the simple, and simplicity breeds that passion. Look, there are lots of other drifts that we have in life, and you can probably articulate them for yourself better than I can. But it's important to be fiercely intentional, not just coast, not just go to the easiest line of least resistance, but to be fiercely intentional about those attitudes and those actions and those behaviours that we want to happen in our leadership. So I hope this is helpful. Catch my drift. Please catch my drift. Let me not just drift along in leadership and life, but let me be intentional about that. Hope this helps. As I said at the beginning, if it does, please feel free to feedback on my website or Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. Glad you do that. I'm trying to get my Instagram link working better. The others are okay at the moment. I'm just trying to get that working a little better, so bear with me on that. But please feel free to feedback at the website, timhanna.com.au. You'll be able to see the other video blogs on there. So thanks again for joining in. Take care, stay safe, and live in hope.